Objection. The word thundered across the courtroom, sharp and unexpected. Everyone froze. The judge, the bailiff, the lawyers, the jury. No one had seen it coming. Not from the woman at the defense table, not from any attorney. It had come from the back row. From a boy. 8-year-old Elijah Parker stood up, his small hands balled into fists. His voice wavered at first, but it carried a weight that silenced the rustling of papers and the muttering of onlookers. You can't say that about my mom. It's not true. The judge blinked, startled. Who spoke? All eyes turned. A hush fell over the packed courtroom as Elijah's mother, Tanisha, reached for her son's wrist, tugging at him desperately. Eli, sit down. Please. Baby, don't do this. Her voice cracked, a mix of panic and heartbreak. But Elijah shook his head, jaw trembling but eyes unflinching. No, Mama. They are lying. They are trying to make you look bad. The prosecutor, a broad-shouldered man in a tailored gray suit, turned slowly, his face twisting into disbelief. Your Honor, this is outrageous. A child. Quiet. The judge's gavel struck, once, twice. The sound echoed. His eyes, gray and sharp, fixed on Elijah. Son, this is a courtroom. Children are not permitted to address the bench. Eli's chin lifted. His voice trembled, but each word was deliberate. I know, but if this is about truth, then you have to hear me. Because nobody here is telling the truth about my mom. A ripple of gasps spread through the room. Tanisha pulled harder, her hands shaking. Eli, please. Sit down. Don't make it worse. Her cheeks burned with shame. She already felt small, standing alone against her former employer, a powerful man with money, lawyers, and influence. But now, her son was standing in front of everyone, defying the rules. The judge leaned forward, peering at the boy over his glasses. For a long, weighted silence, he said nothing. The boy's thin shoulders rose and fell, his small frame nearly swallowed by the oversized hoodie he wore. But his eyes, dark, unwavering, never left the judge's. Finally, the judge spoke. His voice was softer than anyone expected. What's your name, son? Elijah Parker. People call me Eli. And what do you think you have to say that could possibly matter here today? Eli swallowed, gripping the back of his chair to steady himself. Just one thing. One question. If I can't prove they are twisting the truth, I'll sit down and be quiet. I promise. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The prosecutor scoffed, shaking his head. Your Honor, this is absurd. This child cannot possibly. Silence, the judge snapped, sharper this time. He studied Elijah for a moment longer, then sighed, tapping his gavel lightly against the desk. One question. That is all. Make it count, young man. Tanisha buried her face in her hands. Elijah turned, facing the prosecutor, his voice steadying. You said my mom missed 3 appointments with child services. You said that meant she didn't care enough to follow the rules, right? The prosecutor smirked faintly. Correct. Eli nodded slowly. But you forgot to tell them what time those meetings were scheduled. He flipped open a worn notebook in his hands. His handwriting, messy, childlike, covered every page, but he had highlighted the important lines. His small finger landed on 2 o'clock. On weekdays. Isn't that right? The prosecutor hesitated, caught off guard. Yes, but... And isn't it also true, Eli pressed, voice rising now, that my mom works double shifts at the hospital every weekday? She's a nurse. She can't just walk out of surgery to go to a meeting. She's busy saving lives. The courtroom went silent. Tanisha lifted her head, tears welling. She hadn't known her son had been reading the case files at night while she slept. She hadn't known he was carrying her fight on his small shoulders. The judge leaned back slowly in his chair. The prosecutor's jaw tightened, his rehearsed confidence faltering. Reporters' pens scratched furiously across notepads. And Eli, just 8 years old, stood taller than he ever had. His voice carried with a force that made the walls seem to close in. My mom doesn't miss things because she doesn't care. She misses them because she cares too much, about her patients, about me, about everyone. If that makes her a bad mom, then maybe the system is wrong. The judge's gavel came down again, but softer this time. His eyes lingered on Elijah with something unspoken, something dangerously close to respect. Mr. Parker, the judge said, his voice gravelly, you may have just changed everything. And in that moment, the trial that was supposed to destroy Tanisha Parker shifted in ways no one in that courtroom could have imagined. The gavel's echo still lingered as Elijah slowly sat back down, his little chest rising and falling like he had just run a marathon. His mom's hand found his, squeezing hard, almost too hard. "Eli," she whispered through trembling lips. "Baby, what did you just do?" He didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on the judge, who was scribbling notes furiously. Eli's notebook, filled with his careful handwriting and dog-eared pages, rested open on his lap. He held it like a shield, his fingers gripping the edges. The prosecutor leaned toward the wealthy man sitting behind him, the accuser, Mr. Whitmore. His suit was immaculate, his gold watch glinting beneath the courtroom lights. Whitmore's expression was cold, predatory. He whispered something in the prosecutor's ear, and the man nodded grimly. Tanisha felt her stomach twist. She had worked for Mr. Whitmore for nearly 5 years as a live-in assistant when Eli was younger. She knew that look. It was the same look he gave when he decided someone had no more value to him. Her eyes burned as she squeezed Eli's hand tighter. She wanted to protect him from all of this, from Whitmore's cruelty, from the way money twisted justice. But how could she, when she couldn't even afford a lawyer to stand beside her? The hospital break room was empty except for the hum of a vending machine. Tanisha sat slumped in a chair, her scrubs wrinkled, her hair pulled into a tired bun. Her shift had ended hours ago, but paperwork had chained her to the hospital until the sun was nearly down. Her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, until she saw the name on the screen, Whitmore, Daniel. Her chest tightened. She hadn't spoken to him in months. Not since she quit his house. The long nights, the endless demands, the way his temper exploded when she stood up for herself. She had left to protect her sanity, even though it meant financial struggle. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello. Tanisha," came Whitmore's voice, smooth but edged. "We need to talk." "About what?" she asked cautiously. "About the money you owe me," he said flatly. Her breath caught. "What money?" "The car I let you use. The childcare expenses. The advances. You think I forgot?" Her blood ran cold. The car had been a loaner for errands. The advances had been wages she had earned but never fully received. And the childcare? He had insisted she bring Eli when she worked long weekends at his estate, then docked her pay when Eli made too much noise. "You know that's not true," she whispered. Whitmore chuckled, the sound cruel. "The courts will believe me before they believe you. Unless," his voice lowered, "unless you agree to sign an NDA and publicly clear me of certain rumors." Her stomach dropped. The rumors. Whispers about Whitmore's treatment of his employees, about how he kept them tethered through manipulation and fear. Tanisha's hands shook. "No," she said firmly. "I won't lie for you." Silence. Then his voice turned icy. "Then I'll ruin you." He hung up. Eli had never heard that phone call. Tanisha had carried the weight of it alone, too ashamed to tell her son how powerless she felt. Now, watching him stare down a prosecutor twice his size, she realized he had been carrying his own burdens in secret. The notebooks, the late nights with a flashlight under the covers, the questions about the law she thought were just childhood curiosity, it had all been preparation. He had been studying her fight without telling her. She swallowed hard, guilt and pride colliding in her chest. The judge finally spoke again. "We will allow a short recess. Counsel, meet me in chambers." He rose and disappeared behind a door, the bailiff following close behind. The moment he was gone, whispers exploded across the courtroom. Journalists scribbled notes, cameras clicked. Eli sat perfectly still, his eyes down on his notebook, as if none of the noise touched him. Tanisha leaned close. "Eli, baby, where did you even learn all this? Those words, those questions." He looked up at her with eyes too serious for his age. "Mama, I read the law books at the library. I watched videos of court trials online. I wanted to understand why everyone keeps saying money decides everything. I had to know how to fight back." Her throat tightened. She wanted to scold him, to tell him he should be playing ball outside instead of carrying the world's weight. But instead, tears blurred her vision. "You're 8 years old, Eli. You shouldn't have to fight this fight for me." "But I do," he said quietly. "Because nobody else will." When court resumed, Tanisha expected to see her friend, Sharon, sitting in the gallery. Sharon had been her co-worker at the hospital for years, the one person she trusted to watch Eli when she worked night shifts. Sharon had promised to testify on Tanisha's behalf, to tell the court about her long hours and dedication. But Sharon wasn't there. Instead, Tanisha noticed her across the room, sitting beside Mr. Whitmore. Her stomach dropped. Whitmore leaned close to Sharon, whispering something that made her shift uncomfortably in her seat. She wouldn't even look in Tanisha's direction. Eli noticed too. "Mama," he whispered, tugging her sleeve. "Why is Auntie Sharon sitting with him?" Tanisha's lips parted, but no words came. Her chest felt hollow. She had begged Sharon to stand with her, to speak truth, to help protect Eli's future. And now Sharon was on the other side, her silence a blade twisting in Tanisha's ribs. The betrayal wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, subtle, devastating. And Tanisha realized in that moment that Whitmore wasn't just fighting her with lawyers. He was buying people. People she thought were her friends. She sat frozen, her hand tightening around Eli's. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of despair. "We're on our own, baby." The air in the courtroom felt heavier after the recess, like the walls themselves had shifted closer. The judge returned from chambers with a grave expression. He settled into his seat, adjusting his glasses, then lifted his gavel. "After review," he began, his voice steady but stern, "this court recognizes that Ms. Tanisha Parker is without legal counsel. Normally, such circumstances would warrant a continuance, allowing her time to secure representation." Tanisha's shoulders sagged with relief. Maybe she would get a chance to breathe, to gather resources, to find someone, anyone, to stand by her. But then the judge's voice hardened. "However, given the plaintiff's assertion of ongoing damages and the urgency with which this matter has been brought forth, I am compelled to proceed without delay." The words hit Tanisha like a physical blow. Her relief evaporated. "But, Your Honor." The judge held up his hand. "I understand the disadvantage, Ms. Parker. But the law does not allow indefinite postponement. The trial will continue, with or without counsel." A ripple of gasps spread through the room. Eli's small hand clutched hers under the table. His palm was damp, trembling, but his voice was fierce. "We can do it, Mama." Her heart cracked. He believed it. He really believed it. The prosecutor smirked and shuffled his papers, while Whitmore leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting with satisfaction. He had maneuvered the system perfectly. No lawyer, no support, no chance. The judge's gavel struck once more. "Proceed." The prosecutor rose smoothly, his tone carrying the smug ease of a man who knew victory was already in his pocket. "Your Honor, the plaintiff, Mr. Whitmore, will demonstrate a clear pattern of negligence, irresponsibility, and breach of trust on the part of Ms. Parker. Not only did she fail to meet required obligations, but her neglect has caused significant harm to his reputation and financial interests." Tanisha sat stiffly, her throat tightening. She wanted to shout, to interrupt, but the weight of protocol pinned her down. Then the prosecutor added, almost casually, "And in order to establish these facts, the plaintiff is prepared to present witnesses, including individuals who once stood close to the defendant." Her chest constricted. She knew who he meant. Sharon, her oldest friend, her trusted confidant. Eli's grip on her hand tightened, sensing her dread before she could speak it. When Sharon walked to the witness box, her steps were hesitant, her eyes fixed on the floor. She wouldn't meet Tanisha's gaze. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" the bailiff asked. "I do," Sharon murmured. Tanisha's heart screamed in silence. The prosecutor began smoothly. "Ms. Daniels, you worked closely with Ms. Parker for several years, correct?" "Yes," Sharon said softly. "And during that time, did you observe her missing important responsibilities? Appointments? Shifts?" Sharon hesitated. "Sometimes. She was always tired. Always stretched thin." The prosecutor's smile widened. "So you would say she was unreliable?" Tanisha shook her head violently, whispering, No, that's not true." Sharon's eyes flickered up for a brief second, meeting Tanisha's gaze, then darted away. "Yes," she whispered. "Unreliable." The words felt like knives. Eli jolted forward in his seat. "That's a lie," he blurted. The judge banged his gavel. "Young man, enough." Eli's chest heaved, but he bit his tongue. He couldn't risk being thrown out. Not now. Whitmore sat smugly, his fingers steepled under his chin. His trap was working. As Sharon continued to testify, something clicked in Eli's sharp young mind. He flipped quickly through his notebook, his eyes scanning highlighted passages. A note he had scribbled days earlier leapt out at him. Whitmore's charity gala, Sharon guest list. His stomach turned. Sharon hadn't been struggling like his mama these past weeks. She'd shown up with new shoes, new earrings. Eli had thought it was just coincidence. But now, staring at her across the courtroom, the truth burned in his chest. Whitmore had bought her silence, bought her testimony. And Eli realized something even more sinister. Whitmore wasn't suing for money. Not really. The amount he claimed Tanisha owed was small compared to his fortune. This wasn't about debt. This was about punishment. About humiliation. He wanted to make an example out of her. Eli clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles went white. He could feel the betrayal in his bones, but deeper still, he felt the fire of defiance. He whispered under his breath, so low only his mother could hear. "He's not gonna win, Mama. Not while I'm here." Tanisha turned to him, tears brimming in her eyes. Her voice was a broken whisper. "Baby, this isn't a fight for you." But Eli shook his head. "It's already mine." When Sharon stepped down from the stand, avoiding Tanisha's eyes, the prosecutor turned smugly toward the judge. "Your Honor, the plaintiff's evidence is clear and compelling. We move for immediate judgment in our favor." The words hit like a thunderclap. Immediate judgment. Without even letting Tanisha speak. Without hearing her side. The judge leaned back, stroking his chin. He seemed tempted. "No," Eli whispered. His voice grew louder. "No, you can't do that." He stood again, notebook in hand. The judge frowned. "Young man, I warned you." But Eli didn't stop. His voice rang out, high but fierce. "If you're really about truth, then let her speak. Let me speak. You can't just end this without hearing us." The entire courtroom erupted, reporters scribbling, cameras clicking, whispers swelling into gasps. The judge slammed his gavel, but his eyes lingered on Eli, searching, weighing. Finally, he sighed. "This is highly irregular. But the boy has raised a fair point." He turned to Tanisha. "Ms. Parker, I will allow you to present your defense." However, his eyes hardened. "Given the absence of counsel, your son seems determined to act as your advocate. If you accept this, then the court will permit it. But be warned, once he begins, this court will treat him as counsel. He will face the same scrutiny, the same rules, the same consequences." Tanisha's heart froze. Eli's eyes blazed. The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Parker, do you accept these terms?" The room went still, the air heavy with anticipation. This was it. The point of no return. The gavel cracked the silence. "Proceed," the judge said, his voice steady but weighted. Eli swallowed hard, his tiny hands clutching the edge of the defense table. The principal's words still echoed in his head, unstable, overburdened, under strain. Every syllable had cut deeper than Whitmore's money or Sharon's lies ever could. Because this time, it wasn't just his mother they had attacked. It was him. Tanisha leaned down, whispering, "Baby, you don't have to keep going. Please. You've already done more than anyone could expect." Eli shook his head fiercely. "Mama, if I stop, they'll think they are right. They'll think you failed me. And you didn't. You never did." His voice cracked at the end, but the conviction in it stilled her. She brushed her trembling hand across his cheek. "Then whatever happens, know I'm proud of you." The prosecutor adjusted his tie and called the next witness. "We would like to hear from Mr. Harold Jennings, financial director of Whitmore Enterprises." A tall man with sharp glasses and a polished suit strode to the stand. His expression was cool, calculating. "Mr. Jennings," the attorney began, "can you speak to Ms. Parker's handling of company property?" "Yes," Jennings said smoothly. "During her employment, we documented several instances where medical equipment under her supervision was misplaced, improperly logged, or damaged. This resulted in measurable financial losses for the company." Eli frowned, flipping through his notes. He hadn't seen this claim before. Jennings continued, voice unshakable. "In fact, one such loss involved a diagnostic scanner valued at over $40,000, which went missing for 3 days under her care. The company bore the cost of delayed procedures and reputational harm. It was only after Ms. Parker was removed from her duties that these irregularities stopped." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Tanisha stiffened, shaking her head wildly. "That's a lie. I never." "Order," the judge barked. Eli's heart pounded. This was new. This was dangerous. He had nothing in his notes, no prepared questions. His breath came shallow. Whitmore leaned forward at the plaintiff's table, his smile smug, his eyes drilling into Eli. "Checkmate." The judge nodded. "Defense may cross-examine." Eli stepped forward, forcing his knees not to buckle. He looked up at Jennings. Mr. Jennings, are you saying my mom personally lost that equipment? Yes, Jennings said confidently. The logs prove it. Eli hesitated. His hands trembled as he flipped to a blank page in his notebook. Can you show the court those logs? The attorney interjected smoothly. Unfortunately, Your Honor, those particular records were damaged in a flood incident at the company archives. But multiple staff reports confirm Ms. Parker's negligence. The words hit like a brick. No evidence. Just testimony. Testimony from employees who worked for Whitmore. Eli's stomach twisted. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The courtroom waited. The silence grew unbearable. Jennings smirked. Got your tongue, boy. The gallery chuckled cruelly. Even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Eli's face burned. He finally croaked. No further questions. The prosecutor smirked. Of course not. When the judge called a recess, Tanisha pulled Eli into the corner of the courtroom. Her arms wrapped around him tightly, but he could feel her trembling. Eli, they are destroying us. I should never have let you do this. I'm so sorry. He pressed his forehead to her chest, his voice muffled. Mama, I don't know what to do. I thought I was smart enough. But what if I'm not? Her tears fell into his hair. Baby, you are more than enough. Don't you see? You already showed the world who you are. Even if we lose, I'll never see you as anything but a miracle. But Eli couldn't shake the image of Jennings' smirk. He couldn't ignore Whitmore's satisfied glare. They were winning, and he was failing. As Eli sat slumped on the bench during the break, a soft voice whispered, Hey, little man. He looked up. It was Sharon, the nurse who had lied against his mother, who had already cracked once under his questioning. Her eyes were red-rimmed, guilt etched into her face. I need you to know. I didn't want to testify against your mama. They made me. They threatened to take away my job, my pension. I thought I could live with it. But watching you up there, her voice broke. You're just a kid. And you're braver than all of us. Eli's heart raced. Then help us. Tell the truth. Sharon bit her lip, tears welling. I can't. Not yet. If I do, Whitmore will ruin me. His small fists clenched. Then he wins. She shook her head, whispering quickly as the bailiff called everyone back to their seats. Listen. Jennings, his lying. The scanner? It wasn't lost. It was locked in a storage closet because Whitmore ordered inventory cuts. Your mama reported it. Jennings buried her report. That's the truth. Before Eli could respond, she pulled back, her face hardening, slipping into silence as she walked away. But the spark had been lit. Eli scribbled the words furiously in his notebook. Scanner locked, report buried. Back in session, Whitmore rose slowly, addressing the court. Your Honor, what we see is not an employer seeking fairness, but an employee desperately trying to excuse failure. And now, dragging her child into the fray as a desperate distraction. If this court allows such theatrics, what precedent will we set? That children may twist the law with emotional pleas. That truth is optional. He turned, his eyes boring into Eli's. This boy is not a genius. He is a shield, a pawn. And his mother, whether she admits it or not, is the one who placed him here. The words struck like daggers. Tanisha gasped, covering her face. Eli's throat tightened, the room spinning around him. The judge's gavel slammed down. Order in the court. But nothing could quiet the storm inside Eli. For the first time, he felt the weight of betrayal, not just from Whitmore, but from a world that seemed to want him silenced. And yet, Sharon's whispered words echoed in his mind. His lying. You have the truth. Find it. Eli clenched his fists, his eyes burning with fresh determination. If Whitmore thought this was the end, he was wrong. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The judge's gavel echoed like thunder, calling the courtroom back to order. Eli sat stiffly at the defense table, his notebook trembling in his hands. His earlier fire had dimmed. Every word Whitmore had thrown, pawn, shield, distraction, gnawed at him like poison. He wanted to stand tall. He wanted to believe he was strong enough. But in that moment, under the relentless gaze of cameras, lawyers, and strangers, Eli felt the crushing truth. He was just a boy. Tanisha reached for his hand under the table. Her fingers squeezed his so tightly it almost hurt. But Eli clung back, desperate for her warmth. The prosecutor rose with a smug expression. Your Honor, the plaintiff moves to admit into evidence Ms. Parker's signed termination report, in which she herself acknowledged ongoing difficulties with reliability, punctuality, and equipment management. The bailiff handed the paper to the judge, who scanned it silently. Eli's eyes widened. That's not true. Mama never. Tanisha's voice cracked. I signed it. Eli turned to her, stunned. What? Mama, why? Her eyes brimmed with tears. They cornered me, Eli. Said if I didn't sign, they'd blacklist me from every hospital in the county. I thought I could move past it, find another way to provide for you. The words crushed him. His own mother, his strongest ally, had given Whitmore the weapon he needed. The prosecutor smiled thinly. No further questions. The document speaks for itself. The rest of the afternoon felt like a slow-motion collapse. Every witness the plaintiff called painted Tanisha as careless, distracted, unstable. Every time Eli rose to cross-examine, he stumbled, his mind foggy, his words weak. His questions landed flat, met with smirks and scoffs. By the time court adjourned, the whispers in the gallery had shifted. Where once there had been awe, now there was pity. As the bailiff dismissed them, Eli stumbled outside with his mother. The sky above the courthouse was heavy and gray, pressing down like the weight in his chest. He sat on the courthouse steps, burying his face in his hands. Mama, they are right. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a kid. We're going to lose. Tanisha sat beside him, her arm around his shoulders. Eli, listen to me. You are not just a kid. You're my son. And the courage you've shown, her voice broke. I wish your father could see you. At the mention of his father, Eli's chest tightened. He'd probably say I don't belong here either. No, Tanisha whispered fiercely. He'd say you've got more strength in your little finger than most men do in their whole bodies. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the sound of distant traffic. Tanisha kissed the top of his head. Even if we lose, Eli, I want you to know something. You are enough. You've already given me more hope than I ever dreamed. Eli sniffled, leaning into her. I just don't want them to take you away from me. Her arms tightened. They can take money, jobs, even our home. But they will never take me away from you. I promise. The next morning, as they entered the courthouse again, Whitmore's attorney intercepted them in the hallway. His voice was calm, almost kind, but every word dripped with menace. Ms. Parker, he said smoothly, there's still a way out of this. Settle. Admit fault. Accept responsibility. And in exchange, we'll drop further charges. No garnishment of wages. No threat of custody issues. Tanisha froze. Custody. The attorney's smile widened. Mr. Whitmore's legal team has already drafted a petition questioning your fitness as a parent, given your financial instability and the unusual circumstances of your son's involvement. Courts are very cautious when it comes to the welfare of a child. Tanisha's stomach dropped. She grabbed Eli's hand. You wouldn't dare. Whitmore himself appeared, stepping closer, his cologne heavy, his grin sharp. I would. And I will. Unless you cooperate. Eli's chest burned. You can't take me away from my mom. Whitmore crouched slightly, his face inches from Eli's. Courts don't listen to little boys, son. They listen to power. Eli's fists clenched. He wanted to scream, to swing, to fight. But he froze, powerless, as Whitmore straightened and walked away. Tanisha knelt, gripping Eli's face in her hands. Her eyes were wild with fear. Eli, if this gets worse, I might have to let go of this fight. No. Eli shouted, jerking back. We can't quit. If we quit, he wins. If we quit, he takes everything. Her tears spilled over. If it means keeping you safe, I'll give up everything else. Eli shook his head furiously. No, Mama. You always told me the truth matters. That we don't back down when someone lies. You can't quit now. Her sob caught in her throat. Then God help us, Eli. Because if we keep going, he's going to destroy us. That night, back in their small apartment, Eli sat at the table, staring at his open notebook. The pages were filled with scribbles, questions, fragments of arguments. None of it felt strong enough. None of it felt like enough to beat Whitmore. Tanisha came in quietly, a blanket draped over her shoulders. She set a steaming mug of cocoa in front of him. You need sleep, baby. I can't, he muttered. If I don't figure this out, we'll lose. She sat across from him, her tired eyes soft. You've already done more than anyone could imagine. Do you know that? An 8-year-old boy stood up in a courtroom against men with power and money, and he didn't flinch. That's already a victory. He shook his head. It's not enough. I don't want people to say, he tried. I want them to say, he won. For you. Her eyes shimmered. She reached across the table, covering his small hand with hers. Win or lose, Eli, you've already saved me. Because you reminded me who I am. And no court, no man, no lie can take that away. They sat in silence, steam curling between them, the fragile warmth of the moment holding back the storm outside their door. But deep down, Eli knew tomorrow would bring the breaking point. The courtroom was silent except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. The tension was so thick, it clung to every breath. Judge Reynolds adjusted his glasses and glanced over the crowded gallery. Counsel, he said slowly, we are nearing the end of testimony. Closing arguments will be tomorrow morning. But if either side has further evidence, now is the time to present it. Eli's hands clenched the edge of the defense table. His heart pounded. This was it, the last window, the last chance to prove his mother's innocence. But his notes were a mess, his questions felt weak, and Whitmore's legal team was stronger than ever. Then his eyes met Sharon's. She sat in the back row, hands folded tightly in her lap. The nurse who had once worked under Tanisha, who had confided in Eli days earlier in a trembling whisper. Whitmore faked the reports. He pushed the errors onto your mom to cover his own tracks. I saw him do it. Eli remembered the fear in her eyes. If I testify, I'll never work again. He'll blacklist me. I've got 2 kids. I can't risk it. Now, across the courtroom, she gave him a barely perceptible shake of her head. A plea. Don't call on me. Eli's stomach twisted. He knew that if Sharon spoke, Whitmore's entire case would crumble. But forcing her to testify would expose her, maybe ruin her life. He looked up at his mother. Tanisha's eyes were tired, pleading. She knew what was at stake. She also knew the cost of dragging someone else into the fire. The judge's voice broke the silence. Defense. Do you have anything further? All eyes turned to the boy. Eli rose slowly, his knees shaking. Yes, Your Honor. I have something. The gallery leaned forward, whispers spreading. Whitmore smirked, tapping his pen against the table like a man already confident of victory. Eli's throat went dry. His gaze darted back to Sharon. She looked terrified, her lips forming silent words, please. Don't. He glanced at his mother. She gave him the faintest nod. Not instruction, not pressure, just faith. Eli's fists clenched. His chest burned. His mind screamed 2 voices at once. If you protect Sharon, you lose your mom. If you expose Sharon, you destroy her life. His voice cracked. Your Honor, I. The judge leaned forward. Speak up, son. Eli swallowed hard, his whole body trembling. There's someone in this room who knows the truth, who saw what really happened. But if I say their name, they could get hurt. They could lose everything. The judge's brows furrowed. Son, this is not the place for games. I'm not playing. Eli's voice broke, sharp with desperation. I just don't know what's right. The gallery murmured. The judge raised his gavel for silence. Eli's vision blurred with tears. His voice lowered, aching. If I stay quiet, my mom loses. If I speak, someone else loses. I don't want anyone to lose. Tanisha stood, unable to remain silent. Eli. Her voice was soft, steady, but full of emotion. She turned to the judge. He's 8 years old, and he's carrying the weight of a courtroom on his shoulders because of me. That's not justice. The judge studied her carefully. Whitmore rose abruptly. Your Honor, this is absurd. We cannot allow a child's indecision to drag this case further into. Sit down, Mr. Whitmore, the judge snapped, sharper than anyone expected. Whitmore froze, his jaw tightening. Eli's chest heaved. His mind raced. He looked again at Sharon. He could see the tears welling in her eyes. She was silently begging him not to expose her. Then he looked at his mom, who was staring at him with a strength that defied exhaustion. You've already done enough, baby, she whispered. If you say nothing else, I'll still be proud of you. Eli shook his head, his voice trembling. No, I can't let him win. Not like this. The room held its breath. Eli turned, pointing a small trembling finger toward the back row. His voice was shaky but clear. She knows. Sharon knows. She saw Mr. Whitmore change the reports. She knows my mom didn't do those things. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Sharon covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Whitmore shot up from his chair. Objection. This is slander, Your Honor. That boy is grasping at straws. The judge slammed his gavel. Order! Order! He turned to Sharon. Miss, step forward. Sharon rose slowly, as if her legs were made of lead. Her hands shook as she clutched her purse. Every step toward the witness stand looked like it cost her a year of her life. Whitmore hissed to his lawyer, shut her down, destroy her credibility. But the damage was done. The impossible choice had been made. As Sharon was sworn in, Eli sat heavily back in his chair, his face pale. His chest hurt. He wanted to feel relief, but instead, he felt hollow. He had saved his mother, but at what price? Tanisha put her arm around him, whispering, "You did the bravest thing I've ever seen. No matter what happens next, you've changed everything." Eli's lips trembled. He whispered back, "I hope I didn't ruin her life." The gavel struck again. Proceed. The storm had begun. The oath trembled on Sharon's lips. "I swear tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God." Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the packed courtroom, every syllable carried. She lowered herself into the witness chair as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her eyes flickered to Eli, just for an instant, and he felt the sting of her silent message. "You forced me here. God help us both." Judge Reynolds adjusted his glasses. "Proceed, Miss Sharon. Tell us what you know." Sharon's hands twisted in her lap. She took a shaky breath. I worked under Ms. Parker for 4 years at St. Augustine Hospital. She was one of the best nurses I ever saw. Careful. Patient. Always double-checking everything. The reports that got her fired. Her throat tightened. Tears burned her eyes. They weren't hers. They were falsified. Mr. Whitmore told me to backdate and sign off on certain logs, ones that shifted responsibility to Ms. Parker. When I refused, he threatened to end my contract. Said no hospital in the city would ever hire me again. Gasps erupted across the gallery. The judge banged his gavel. Order! Whitmore's jaw clenched, but his lawyer leaned forward quickly. Miss Sharon, you're admitting to complicity in document tampering? That's a serious crime. Why should this court believe a word you say now, when you're only speaking to save yourself? Sharon's voice cracked. Because I couldn't carry it anymore. Because that boy, she turned toward Eli, her eyes brimming, had the courage I didn't, and I couldn't let him fight alone. Eli's chest tightened. For the first time that day, he felt tears sting his own eyes. Whitmore's attorney stood, smiling coldly. Miss Sharon, let's be honest. You were disciplined twice for negligence on the job, were you not? Sharon froze. Yes, but... And didn't you once face suspension for improperly filing patient logs? That was a mistake, not intentional. The lawyer's voice grew louder, sharper. So, you have a documented history of carelessness. And now you claim, years later, that your boss ordered you to falsify documents, but you conveniently have no proof. No emails, no records, nothing but your word. Sharon's face paled. The lawyer pressed harder. You're not a whistleblower, Miss Sharon. You're a desperate woman, trying to cover for your own mistakes by throwing blame on a respected employer. Gasps rippled again. Sharon's lips trembled. She glanced at the judge, at Eli, at Tanisha. Her whole body seemed to fold in on itself. Eli's fists clenched. He couldn't stay silent. That's not true. She's telling the truth. The judge snapped. Mr. Parker, silence or I'll have you removed. Eli sank back, shaking, helpless as Whitmore's lawyer circled Sharon like a shark. Miss Sharon, the lawyer said smoothly, you admit you falsified nothing. You admit you signed no document. Yet you accuse Mr. Whitmore of ordering this alleged scheme. If you were so horrified, why didn't you report him then? Why wait until today, when your friend is on trial? Sharon's eyes filled. Because I was scared. Because I had kids to feed. Because, she broke off, choking. The lawyer pounced. Because you're lying now. Her shoulders collapsed. Tears spilled down her cheeks. The gallery murmured. The balance had shifted again. Whitmore leaned back in his chair, smirking, confident the storm was breaking his way. Eli's heart hammered. He couldn't breathe. He had forced Sharon to the stand, and now she was being shredded apart, her reputation dragged through the mud. His vision blurred. He felt his mom's hand squeeze his shoulder, grounding him. Eli, she whispered, look at me. He turned. Her eyes were steady, burning with quiet fire. You were right to call her. She's speaking truth. Truth doesn't always win easy. But it always matters. Eli blinked hard, swallowing the lump in his throat. He turned back to Sharon, his small voice trembling. Please don't give up. Don't let him win. She looked at him, and something in her eyes hardened. Sharon straightened in her chair. Her tears still streamed, but her voice gained steel. I was scared. Yes. I was weak. Yes. But I am not lying. Whitmore did this. He told me to bury those mistakes, and when I refused, he made sure Tanisha took the fall. The lawyer sneered. Without proof, those are just words. Sharon lifted her chin. Then let them be words. At least they are true. And I'd rather lose everything than live with one more day of silence. The courtroom fell utterly silent. Even the lawyer faltered for a heartbeat, caught off guard by her resolve. The judge studied her for a long moment. Thank you, Miss Sharon. You may step down. She rose slowly, her shoulders shaking, but as she walked past Eli, she gave him the faintest nod. A silent message. You gave me courage. Whitmore's lawyer sputtered objections, but Judge Reynolds cut him off. Enough. This court will reconvene tomorrow for closing arguments. Both sides prepare accordingly. The gavel cracked. The gallery buzzed as people rose to leave, reporters whispering furiously, pens scratching across notebooks. Eli slumped back in his chair, drained. His chest ached with guilt and relief all tangled together. Tanisha pulled him into her arms. You did it, baby. You turned the tide. Eli whispered back, but what if she loses everything now? Tanisha kissed the top of his head. Sometimes the bravest people are the ones willing to lose everything for the truth. And you gave her that bravery. Eli closed his eyes, holding on to his mother's warmth, knowing tomorrow would decide it all. The next morning, the courthouse buzzed with a tension that felt almost electric. Reporters clustered on the steps. Curious citizens squeezed into the gallery. Everyone wanted to see how the case of Parker versus Whitmore would end. Eli clutched his mother's hand as they entered. Her palm was cool, but her grip was steady. Sharon walked beside them, pale but resolute, her shoulders squared. The gallery murmured at the sight of her, whispers chasing them like shadows. Judge Reynolds took his seat, his gavel striking like a thunderclap. This court is now in session. Closing arguments. Whitmore's lawyer strode to the center with the confidence of a man who thought the battle already won. Ladies and gentlemen, he began smoothly, though his gaze flickered to Eli for the briefest second. Yesterday you heard testimony from Miss Sharon, an emotional tale, yes, but without evidence. What we have here is a desperate attempt to discredit a respected businessman, a mother who refuses to accept responsibility for her negligence, and a frightened friend who has invented a story to shield her. He turned toward the jury, voice rising. Do not be swayed by theatrics. Sympathy is not evidence. Tears are not truth. And a child's interruptions, however dramatic, are not the law. The law demands proof, and there is none. He stepped back with a smirk, confident he'd planted the seed of doubt. Tanisha rose slowly. For a moment, Eli thought she might falter, but then she lifted her chin, and her voice carried with quiet fire. I am not a lawyer. I am a nurse. I have spent my life taking care of people, making sure they live, making sure they heal. I was fired for something I did not do, and the only reason I'm standing here today is because I could not afford an attorney. But I stand with the truth. She looked directly at the jury. I ask you, if you punish me, what message do you send? That power always wins. That those without money have no right to justice. Or will you say, here and now, that even the least among us still has a voice in this court? The gallery murmured. Her words hung in the air like a prayer. Judge Reynolds cleared his throat. Before I render my ruling, is there anything further? The court stilled. Eli felt his heart leap into his throat. He didn't know why, he didn't plan it, but his hand shot into the air. Your Honor. His small voice trembled. The judge blinked. Mr. Parker, this is highly irregular. Please, Eli whispered. His hands shook. Just one thing. A pause stretched, long and heavy. Then the judge sighed. Very well. Briefly. Eli stood on shaky legs, the entire room watching. His voice cracked at first, but then steadied with something older than his years. My mom taught me how to read, even when she was tired from working 2 shifts. She taught me to always tell the truth, even if it hurts. And she taught me that people are supposed to be equal in this country. He turned, looking at Whitmore, then back at the judge. But she's not treated equal here. Mr. Whitmore has money, lawyers, power. We don't. But that doesn't make her wrong. It doesn't make him right. His little fists clenched. If adults are too scared to say the truth, then let a kid say it. Mr. Whitmore lied. Miss Sharon told you what happened. And I'm begging you, Your Honor, don't let money win. Let the truth win. Silence. Complete, aching silence. The judge's face softened. His gavel tapped gently, almost thoughtfully. Judge Reynolds leaned forward. This has been an unusual case. But one thing is clear. The evidence against Ms. Parker was circumstantial, built on testimony from individuals with conflicts of interest. Yesterday, Miss Sharon's testimony, despite the lack of documentation, was credible under oath. Her courage in confessing her own complicity adds weight to her claim. He paused, looking at Eli, then Tanisha. And sometimes, truth speaks clearest from unexpected voices. His gavel slammed. The court finds in favor of Ms. Tanisha Parker. The charges are dismissed. Furthermore, I am recommending an investigation into Mr. Whitmore's conduct and the hospital's handling of this matter. The courtroom exploded. Cheers. Gasps. Reporters scribbling furiously. Tanisha covered her mouth, tears streaming. Sharon collapsed into her chair, sobbing with relief. And Eli just stood frozen, hardly able to breathe, until his mother swept him into her arms. You saved me, she whispered, voice breaking. You saved us. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. Mrs. Parker, how do you feel? Eli, what made you speak up? Sharon, are you afraid of retaliation? Tanisha held Eli's hand tightly, shielding him. We're just going home, she said softly, pushing through the crowd. But later that night, when the noise faded and they were safe in their tiny apartment, Eli curled against his mother on the couch. She stroked his hair, whispering over and over, My brave boy. My heart. He looked up at her with sleepy eyes. Does this mean we're safe now? She kissed his forehead. Safer than before. And whatever comes, we'll face it together. Sharon sat across from them, her eyes red but determined. I don't know what happens next for me, but for the first time in years, I feel free. The three of them sat in silence, bound together by something unspoken. Truth, love, and a fight they never expected to win. Weeks later, Eli walked past the courthouse with his mom. He stopped, staring up at the stone building. Feels different now, he murmured. Tanisha smiled, brushing her hand through his curls. That's because you changed it, baby. You made them listen. Eli tilted his head, thoughtful. Do you think other kids could do that too? Speak up for their moms. Her eyes softened. I think you just showed them how. And as they walked on, hand in hand, the city around them seemed somehow brighter, as if the truth had cracked open a little more space for justice to live. What did this story teach you about how courage doesn't always come from power, but from love and truth, even in the smallest voices? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world.